Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Wayne Hoffman, president of Idaho Freedom Action, and joined today by a freshman representative, Tina Lambert, who represents Hawaii County along with a bit of Ada and Canyon counties. Welcome to the program. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I don't think we've had a chance to really visit before, so this is kind of exciting for me.
Yeah, me too.
How was your first legislative session?
It was very interesting. I knew there was going to be a lot I didn't know, and I knew it was, well, I don't want to start out on a negative, but I knew it was going to be bad.
What do you mean bad?
Well, naively, I assumed that legislators all went to Boise to represent the people of Idaho. At least that was my intention, to represent the people of Idaho and do their wishes, do what they want. And that is not what the majority, well, there are a lot of people in the Capitol building who are not working for the people of Idaho. Gosh, I feel bad about starting out on a bad
That's
note.
okay. Let's dig into that a little bit. Who do you think they're working for?
Themselves, I think a lot of them just are in there for the power. I suppose there are some groups they're working for, but I think there's just a lot of selfishness and power grabbing, and I don't know.
What do
I just
you
know it's not for the people of Idaho.
What do you think? Give me a good example of that.
Well, how about House Bill 314, protecting kids from pornography? Why that didn't get the governor's, why did the governor veto that? And then why did we not override it? It's just, I have no words.
To be clear, there were a couple of bills dealing with pornography and children. There was a bill that was considered in the Senate, which basically would have put the government in charge of cell phones activated in Idaho, which failed. That was also billed as protecting kids from pornography, but it took a different tactic, which was to give government more control over people's individuality and the devices that they use, like this one. And the 314 was the bill dealing with cell phones, dealing with library books, and passed the House and the Senate and came within one vote of a override. The governor vetoed it, came within one vote of being overridden in the House. And you think that's because of selfish reasons or self-interest, or is it special interest groups? What was it?
Well, actually, that probably wasn't a very good example that I used, because I don't know what I can't even get my mind around why anybody would not want to protect children from that. It's the same situation as somebody under 18 can't go into the convenience store and buy a copy of Playboy, but they can
But
go.
in this case, we're specifically talking about the public libraries that are funded by taxpayers, schools, and regular public library accessible to the general public, buying and stocking pornographic books. We pay for them, and then our publicly funded libraries stock them and then make them available to kids.
Wow, yeah, hadn't really gone there in my head, but yeah, why are taxpayers paying for pornography?
Question that I've been kind of wondering.
Yeah, seems like a really bad idea.
So you're on the House Appropriations Committee, or as it meets jointly with the Senate Committee, JFAC. What's been that experience like for you as a freshman?
That was awful.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No,
What's
I
up?
just, well, after a few weeks of every day coming in and for 3 hours listening to the agencies tell us what a great job they're doing and how they need more money, it just felt like I felt like a parent and my teenager coming in and with their hand out, give me some more, give me some more. Didn't enjoy that. So, but I'm glad I'm there, because I feel like it's my role to stand between those agencies and the taxpayers. Unfortunately, there aren't enough people on JFAC who view that as their role.
What do they view their role as?
I think they're rubber stampers. Whatever the governor wants, governor gets.
Is there a budget in particular you think that is most exemplifies that thinking?
Well, Medicaid, the whole health and welfare budget, that comes to mind first, and then education.
Well, you did get $150 million clipped off of the Medicaid budget, but some argue, well, we've argued, that they could have done a whole lot more because there are a lot of folks that are on Medicaid who shouldn't be on Medicaid. Should not, to clarify, should not be on Medicaid.
Right, and we are spending a lot of money on things that we shouldn't be spending money on.
And the public schools budget you mentioned, which is interesting because you were a home educator.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the public schools budget generally with that background?
Well, it's always kind of bothered me that as a homeschool mom, we took education into our own hands and educated our kids. And then at the same time, we paid taxes to educate everybody else's kids. A lot of people do that. It doesn't seem right. Seems like socialism, you know?
It is socialism, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Should government be in the education business at all?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think that's a popular opinion, but I don't think so. I know, though, somehow it got into the Idaho Constitution that we have to fund public education. So that's a difficulty for me.
Do you think we're stuck with it forever, or do you think there's a way for people to extricate themselves from the system?
I hope we're not stuck with it forever. I think, you know, a lot of people have pulled their kids out and they're doing other things. Sometime in the future, maybe there'll be another way. There'll be more ways.
What's the worst bill that you saw pass this last legislative session?
Okay. I don't have the number in my mind, but everybody knows it as the Idaho Launch Program. So we give $8,000 to students that the governor's Workforce Development Council decides is worthy of it.
Why do you hate that bill?
Why do
you hate kids? No, just kidding.
You're right. I love kids. But I think, you know, kids want, well, I would hope that kids want to work and earn stuff rather than just have it handed to them. And it certainly shouldn't be handed to them from people who worked hard. You know, my parents worked hard to put me through college debt-free. And now my mom's taxes go to pay for somebody else's kids to go to college. That is just not right. And, you know, there's so many examples, veterans who've worked their way through school. Now they're going to pay for other kids to go to school. It's just, well, it's socialism that's wrong.
It is socialism. I don't know why do a lot of your colleagues not understand that? And it was really interesting too, because a lot of the Republican freshmen voted in favor of that bill, and you're an exception to that.
Yeah, that was fascinating. It was really interesting to watch the representatives who've been there for many years arguing against that and warning that this is really dangerous. It's only going to grow. It's not a good thing. And then, yeah, it was the freshmen who just carried it through.
What do you think the best bill that passed was?
Well, I kind of liked House Bill 124 because that was my bill. It wasn't the best bill, but I liked it. I don't know, the best bill, 71.
What was 124? I don't remember that one.
Oh, that was removing student IDs as a valid ID for voting at the polls.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
71, you were going to mention, that's the bill that banned the use of sex mutilation procedures on children.
Right. That was a great one. Glad to see that.
Yeah. What do you do for an encore next legislative session? What kind of things are you working on for 2024?
Okay, well, I have a constituent who is really concerned about the electric grid and the fact that they're talking about shutting down coal plants and going to all green energy, and it's going to leave us all sitting in the dark, especially with all of our electric vehicles sitting around. That's a weird thing. So I want to do something about that. I also have a constituent who's concerned about digital utility meters and being able to opt out of that.
Smart meters.
Right. Yeah. No digital identity. Oh, here's another one. I have a constituent who thinks we should be able to, and I agree, carry concealed weapons on school property, at least during non-school hours. Say, for example, somebody goes to practice in a community band at a school in the evening. It's dark when you leave. It would be nice to be able to be carrying a weapon in case, bad things happen. There are bad people out there. No digital vaccination passport or global health certificate. Another constituent asked me to work on public school transparency with parents regarding children. So teachers and counselors can't conceal information from parents about their children if they're coming to school as a boy and then changing into a girl during school and, going back home as a boy. And then we need to declare Idaho a sovereign state and not under federal government directives. And I guess 4 states have done this already, and there are more planning to. So those are the things that are on my mind for the next session.
So you're on the environment, energy, what has it go? Energy, Environment, Technology Committee. I may have gotten the E's backwards on that.
I know I can't keep the E's straight either.
That committee didn't do a whole heck of a lot this last session, but I presume it sounds like you're expecting to do a lot more, especially in terms of fighting the green energy agenda and dealing with some of the smart meter stuff. Or is that committee also going to take on central bank digital currencies? Is that that committee's alley, or is that more state affairs, or do we know?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's another one that I'm interested in, though. We need to not be subject to that here in Idaho.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you just have to look at now that we never talked about before. Artificial intelligence being another one of those things that probably your committee might have to take a look at. And
Yeah.
on the judiciary committee, what's up the alley for that committee? You didn't get very far in dealing with. Well, you did some stuff involving purging records of was it juveniles who have been convicted of crimes? I can't remember the exact. It was, or maybe it was older people.
Yeah,
So
I think sealing records of people, nonviolent offenders who've been clean or good for 5 years or something like that.
And I know that the committee didn't get very far in dealing with mandatory minimums this last legislative session. It got kind of hung up on that. What do you see happening there?
It will come back, and I think maybe it will be a little bit of a different looking bill. I've been at town halls listening to my fellow legislators talk about how we did sort of, the bill was just about adding fentanyl to mandatory minimums, and it kind of morphed into everybody was just talking about mandatory minimums, and so we got off course. And so I've been spending my time asking people everywhere I go, what do you think? And just taking in what they have to say.
What are people saying?
Oh, I'd say it's 50-50 because they all go to the mandatory minimum thing, and half of them say, yeah, it's really good. And half of them say, nah, I don't think that's a good idea. Judges should have discretion. So I'm still sorting it out in my mind and listening to my people.
It'll be a big topic, I'm sure, in the next legislative session. Any other things on your mind?
Oh, let's see. I made some notes. Well, I don't know if anything's going to go much different in the next session, but beyond that, we need more freedom fighters in our legislature. That's the top of my mind, because my priorities are freedom and personal responsibility and limited government, low taxes, and that's not what I'm seeing. But I know that you say Idaho's become more conservative over the past few decades.
Well, over the last 15 years, it has. Well, and actually, if you go back and you look at, so my experience with the legislature goes back to 1995. So I can't
Okay.
speak to anything before that, except for what I read in the House and Senate journals and in various newspaper clippings, and then looking at other historical documents. But if you look from 1995 forward to today, the legislature is the most conservative it's been in that time. If you go back and you look at the period from about 65 to 95, which I look at just their historical documents and reportage from that period, still the most conservative legislature we've had, even from that period. Now, what happened before that from 1890 to 1965, it's a little bit harder to discern because there wasn't a really good measurement, except to tell you that those were the periods that government still grew and did a lot of things. We added the income tax, we added the sales tax, we added all these different state agencies. So I tend to think there's a lot of good evidence to suggest this is the most conservative legislature in state history, but it's certainly the most conservative legislature we've had since 65, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that tells you a lot about the direction of the state over many, many years. We've added a lot of regulations, a lot of programs, a lot of taxes, a lot of control over individuals and their businesses. So yeah, I can tell you it's way better than it's been. Like in the last 15 years, it's night and day. Yeah, so yeah, you're catching the legislature in its best act, and it's still
That's
not that great.
right. Exactly. It's not that great. Well, I'm glad we're going in the right direction anyway.
We're going in the right direction. I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that what would happen is legislators would get elected. They'd vote for pro-life legislation, maybe some pro-gun legislation, and then they'd grow government everywhere else and then go back home and talk about how conservative they are. And so the measurement for conservatism has changed over time. And I think COVID really woke people up also to what had happened. I mean, we've been yelling about it for years using the Freedom Index as a measurement. And then people got to see what happened when government was left unfettered to just deploy its power, its raw power against people. And now folks are really starting to ask a lot of questions, which has been helpful, I guess, in terms of making people focus on state legislators. Do people even know that you work in Boise from January to March, or do they think you're in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, some think I'm in Washington, D.C., and some don't realize that we're only there from January through March. And so I'm educating people everywhere I go.
That's a function of the education system. It's a function of the media, which has focused people. I mean, you'll see stories all the time about Congress, but you don't see much about the state legislature. Now you do, but not near as much as there needs to be. So there's a lack of knowledge out there.
Right. And speaking of that, that's another thing that I was very enlightening to realize that the legislators are there for 3 months, which I think I don't want to be there any longer than that. But the governor and his staff are there all year long, and all of the agency employees are there all year long. So legislators are at a real disadvantage as far as trying to take in all the information and do anything about it in that
Yeah,
short span of time.
you're showing up there and you get roughly 3 months, and they're there all the time, and it's almost like you're coming in at the last inning, and then you have your allies in the legislature that are on the same league in the same space really as the agencies and the special interest groups.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's an uphill battle to fight against all that.
Yeah. Well, appreciate all your hard work. Glad to have you around, and look forward to working with you again as we get ready for the next legislative session.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be there, and I'm thankful to be able to fight for freedom for our people.
All right. Well, thanks for being on this program. And I think we'll be back again this week with another spotlight. So be sure to stay tuned, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.